Okay. All right, the recording has started. All right, so Jasmine, I'd like to start the Board of Directors meeting of the IDA. Could you take the roll call, please?
Tim Dean,
Here.
Mark Doyle,
Yeah.
Kathy Bauer,
Here.
Amy Bonadiri,
Here.
Jamie Pacone,
Here.
Don Sagliano, Al Torrigiano.
Here. Okay, first thing I would like to state is that we have a conflict of interest policy, and if anybody has a conflict on any matter that's coming before us, I would ask that you please state that now. Okay, hearing none. If there's one that comes up during the meeting, I would appreciate it if you would let us know, and then we'll recuse you from the meeting. Proof of meeting notice?
Yes.
Okay. Any bills and communications?
No bills or communications.
Okay, do we have minutes?
We do not have minutes this month. Jasmine was on vacation for the past few weeks, and she just returned earlier this week. So we will have minutes for the board to review at our upcoming meeting.
Okay, is there any report of the treasurer?
Yes.
Okay,
The balance sheet as of November 30th, 2021, there's a cash balance of 2.5 million. Looking at the P and L, there's revenue of 7.7 million against expenses of 7.5 million. A net income of 256,000. There's still two items that'll come through, larger items that'll come through for December, which would be the audit and then also the contract for the Hudson Valley Agri business of 25,000. So that'll
sorry, Hudson Valley what?
it's the agriculture.
Oh, yes.
Contract.
Yep,
And that's for 25,000. Both will be in December,
okay.
but otherwise,
25,000 each or total?
well, the budget for the audit's 14.5 and 25,000 just for the agriculture.
Okay, this is not something we need to vote on, it's just for our review. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. There's no committee reports, correct? Unfinished business? Okay, under new business, we have for consideration approval of the final resolution for T-Rex Shaner Hyde Park to amend the existing agreement sales tax of approximately 433,000 and an additional mortgage recording tax exemption of 77,250. Don, can we discuss them together or should we discuss them separate?
I think it might be clearer if you discuss.
Okay. All right, so Sarah, maybe you could talk about, just for clarity's purpose, the difference between one, or A and B, and then talk about A first.
Okay, so agenda item 9A is at the last meeting on November 10th, Steve Gerasi and Tom Mulroy made a presentation asking for additional benefit for the construction of the hotel in the form of sales tax and mortgage. The cost of the project has increased as well as the amount of financing that we're requesting. And then 9B, where it's going on there is that they are preparing to start on phase 2 of the project, which entails the construction of a welcome center and then eventually some retail and commercial. And they're asking for, they're preparing to close on some financing before the end of the year. So they're asking for mortgage tax exemption for that. But to go back to item 9A, in particular, they, as you said, Tim, asking for sales tax benefit increase by $432,000 approximately, and a mortgage tax exemption of about $77,250. That is for a mortgage in the amount of 36 million, and a public hearing was held yesterday at 9:30. The transcript of the public hearing as well as written comments were distributed to the board prior to this morning. And then we also have Steve Gerasi and Tom Mulroy on the calls to answer any questions the board may have about the hotel.
Okay, so Sarah, we have in there the cover letter from Bellafield.
Yes.
And it's talking about structural steel increases of 8% over the last 12 months. Metal framing, 45%, gypsum wallboard, 20%, copper, 45%, and of course, the cost of oil has gone up as well. Those are part of the reason for 9A.
Yes,
Correct?
correct.
Okay. Good morning, gentlemen. Would you guys like to make any comments to us? I know that we had a preliminary hearing, but is there any sort of summary comments that you'd like to make about this request?
No, it's the same as it was a couple weeks ago that it was outlined in the letter. Costs have not come in at all. In fact, some have, since the last meeting, have still gone up a little. So yes, no, that letter still stands.
Okay, does anybody on the board have any questions or comments about this? Did everybody have an opportunity to read the public hearing minutes? I know that I did. Okay, without any other questions or comments, I would look for a motion to approve this final resolution.
So moved.
Mark Doyle, Jamie seconded, thank you. Jasmine, could you please take a roll call vote?
Mark Doyle,
Yes, approved.
Kathy Bauer,
Approved.
Andy Bondieri,
Approved.
Dan McCollum,
Approved.
Al Kavigani,
Approved.
Jim Dean.
Approved. Okay, 9B. So Sarah, is this a preliminary?
It's just a presentation
Okay.
because the project in its entirety was induced back in 2018. But the way that the agreements are, was written is that with every phase that they begin, they will need to come to the board for the final approval. So preliminary resolution is not required, so therefore they're making a presentation.
And would there be a public hearing?
A public hearing has been scheduled for December 22nd. And then a doodle survey has been sent out to the board for a special meeting on the topic. So once a special meeting date has been identified, that will be posted.
Okay. All right. So gentlemen, would you like to make some comments about your presentation?
Yes, thank you. And thank you to the board and Sarah, Liz, everyone for arranging this. I know towards the year end, it's not that easy. What we're trying to do is come in and close on a financing by year end, and the lender is pushing hard to close year end on a financing for phase 2. It's the infrastructure horizontal and the visitor center, as Sarah outlined earlier. If you have, I don't know, Sarah, if you have a visual there of the concept plan that was included in the application, it highlights the areas which is defined as phase 2 of the Bellafield project.
We don't have a visual in front of us, but we may be able to get it. Is this it right here?
Yes,
Okay.
It's in the application, I believe, on
Like
page.
this?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's right after the
Yeah.
application itself.
Bear with us 1 second, gentlemen.
Sure, sure.
Else, oh, does anybody else need it?
It's okay.
You
I
have
looked
it upside
over
down, you have it
yesterday.
upside down. You have it upside down.
This page.
Yeah, phase 2.
Hey, is everybody, there it is. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, you'll see the highlighted, you're looking at it east-west. To the left is north, to the right is south. Obviously, Route 9, you have the CIA to the south of the west. The main entrance
There you go.
is defined by that small lighter blue box across from the CIA's main entrance. So it's going to really build out the entire southwest corner portion of the project. It'll also activate infrastructure up to the northwest corner, the commercial up in the northwest corner, because we have to bring sewer lines up there and so forth. So that's what we define as phase 2. And in there is, you'll see there's commercial, there's village green area, there's some parking. There'll be a 10,000 square foot sales and marketing center, we call the Experience Center. This loan will fund all of that infrastructure. I wish lenders were not so eager to close by year end to book it on their balance sheet, but this one is what they're doing. Most of the work will probably start in the mid to late spring, once we finalize site plan application.
Sarah, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Nope, that was,
So this is part of their overall plan. It's just a segment of it.
yes.
You'll see the hotel, the first hotel, the dark purple in the far southwest corner. So including that, you'll see the entire southwest corner piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The lower right, I should say, if you're looking at it.
Our printout, actually, the way it was printed out, cuts that bottom part off, but I think,
We looked over it.
yeah.
Okay, questions, comments?
Yeah, I would like to ask a little bit more about the project going forward. So understanding that we have 2 hotels, that in your prospectus, essentially, you're promoting the idea of sort of a very complex development, but that includes an agricultural / food processing component and on-site artisanal beverages and other food product creation or development. And so I'm just wondering how that works out in phases and where you guys, it's now a good amount of time since you originally proposed that to us and spoke about it. So I'd like to know a little bit more about what that looks like.
Sure, I can't see who was speaking there.
It's Mark Doyle.
It's Mark Doyle.
Mark, okay, hey, Mark. Yeah, what this plan is, this is the amended concept plan that we're, I think, within the next couple of weeks going to have adopted by the town. We've been working 1.5 years on amending the previous plan, which was approved back in 2007. We're keeping within the existing approvals for the most part. It's still 2.1 million feet. We increased the resi piece a little versus what it was, but versus commercial. We anticipate this as being really an all integrated mixed-use project of Hudson Valley-based agritourism, culinary tourism, agrihood, essentially, that's going to mix commercial, obviously, with tourism and residential. You'll see the heavy residentials in the west part of the project. There are obviously clusters along Main Street that'll have some residential in it as well. You'll see the heavy infrastructure, the wastewater treatment plant, which is in place to the north part or the left side of your picture there. We plan on phasing this. Once the second phase is up and running, we anticipate this moving pretty quick. As you know, the hotel was delayed over 1.5 years because of COVID. That's just about close to being going now, given costs to the side here. We have a lender finally to go. The second phase, we have a lender for that. We have tenants we've been in active negotiations with to start into that second phase already. We've been waiting for this amended concept plan to be adopted by the town, which is imminent now, hopefully. And then we anticipate going north on that, or to the left on your screen of that plan, right down Main Street and the commercial and the entire Village Green area. And then eventually, after the second hotel we plan on focused on after the first one, the second hotel to be focused on right away, because that will be an epicenter of what sells the future residential as well, because the amenity package and so forth there. That's the Crescent area on your picture. You'll see the terrace and the ridge are residential. The far northwest or the far left corner of St. Andrews, that's all commercial. And the Crescent is really the second hospitality of the hotel, the 333 rooms, and the wellness center, the spa, the event barn and conference center and so forth. That will really be the lightning rod that really will drive the sales in the ridge and the terrace, we believe. But commercial down, we find a lot of interest in the commercial right now along the Main Street piece, standalone restaurants, breweries, wineries. We have bakeries. There's a lot of those Hudson Valley, New York State born origin type businesses want to be here, mainly not because of us, but because the CI is right across the street. There's a huge amount of exposure there for them. And they're not going to be, this is not going to be warehouse processing type stuff. There'll be demonstration type processing. So there'll be, for instance, it's not a secret. We have been, obviously, City Winery is working with them. They'll have demonstration of City Winery and winery there, but they're not making, truckloads of wine. They'll service what's on site. Same with the cider house, same thing. It's not going to be mass factory industrial. This is sort of demonstration showcase for people that are going there on the tourism side. So there'll be an element of it, but it's not the main focus.
Yeah, thank you. I ask because I think that we originally determined that your application was successful on the basis of it essentially being a tourist attraction in its own right. And so as opposed to a retail development. And so, obviously the agricultural food component is the key to that, I think. And I'm a farmer. I know a little bit about the business, and I'm just wondering to what extent I guess the question in my mind is, are you going to be building only subject to tenancy, or is there any sort of development on spec?
No, there'll always be some element of spec. Rarely will you be 100% leased before you break ground. But you try to at least have 50 to 70% of the space circled up and committed before you break ground. And that's what we're striving. We're pretty close to that right now.
I think if I could maybe add in here, I think what Mark may be looking for is, are you going to be driven by who comes to you, or do you have in mind certain types of tenancies that are going to fit this idea of perhaps agriculture, versus just, again, as you mentioned, sort of sampling or retail? Is there going to be any, are you looking to bring in a certain type of tenant?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mark. I didn't understand it. Yeah, this is a themed park here, essentially, and it's based on agricultural, culinary-based theme and tourism along those lines. Most of the tenants will be along that theme. As you can see, the first year we have a winery, we have a hard cider, very high-end cider company. We have a restaurant. There'll be a food hall that we're working with, a brewery. There'll be a small amphitheater there too for entertainment for the City Winery. There's a bakery. There'll be another restaurant we're in the midst of talking to. So the first phase, especially right down on the core, is pretty much circled up. That's the sort of ground zero, for lack of a better term, is where a lot of these tenants want to be for obvious reasons, because it's right across from the culinary. We're not going to be looking at doing, I'm not going to preclude them, but we're not looking for nail salons, stuff like that, convenience type stuff. We're really looking for tourism based. It's the highest bang for our buck. They're going to pay the most to come here to expose their products because of the CIA. And it's going to be that's really the theme of the Hudson Valley, is the breadbasket of the tri-state area, and the CIA happens to be right there. That's really our theme. And because a lot of that, Mark, will also drive the sales of our residences. I don't think a lot of the residents want to overlook and walk down and just see, lack of nothing against nail salons, but nail salons, or, we have no plans for any gas stations and things like that. We want it to be a walkable village, which it is. We have 10 miles of trails planned, connects into the Hudson Valley rail system on the north and end side, which eventually does tie into the Empire Trail system down by the walkway. So it is really a very integrated project based on the culinary theme and agri theme. There will be, the majority of it will be that. We had a group come to us years ago that wanted to buy a chunk of their retail before we amended the concept plan here, and just I think they were going to put a price chopper there. It just would have taken away from the whole, we turned it down, and we could have gotten our money out for the entire project. We turned it down because it would have destroyed the value of the entire project. So we took a lot of time to make sure this is not just a bunch of silos put together and thrown up in typical strip type centers. This is a very integrated project, and well thought out. The people we hired over the last year and a half, big, fairly sizable names. We use as much local as possible, but we did bring in some big names. Hart Howington, who we use over at Silo Ridge as a land planner. The old land planner, Looney Ricks Kiss, as you remember, I'm sure 2007, that plan, which was in the middle of being mended, they were putting Bergdorf Goodman, Chanel, Prada, typical retail that really doesn't work on even Madison Avenue anymore. We completely redid that over the last 16 months, 17 months, and did a complete redo and did a charrette, brought in top talent from the region and from really nationwide, because this is going to be a dot on the map for the Northeast for this type of agrihood / commercial hospitality market. And I think it'll be, being a previous member of the ULI, I think it'll be on the ULI as a case study, and it'll be branded there. It is going to be a very significant project, and we're trying to make sure it's done correctly and not just thrown up to any retail that just drives by. There is a leasing plan. We'll have different uses. We anticipate no McDonald type uses. So that's really.
Mark, you had a follow-up?
Thank you, Tim. So I understand completely on the sort of the village aspect of it. Now, on your website, you propose a structure specifically for utilization for processing of agricultural products into, or food products on a commercial basis. And, I'd just like to say that I would be very much in favor of an investment in that type of a facility, because it's much needed in the area. But
Are you talking a co-packing, like a co-packing facility?
that's what I understand for your website, but maybe I'm reading too much into it.
Yeah, a co-packer who was up in Kingston, did approach us a while back. They were looking for, I think, 200,000 feet to just be a manufacturing facility. That facility is more aimed towards iPark or somewhere in a less tourism location. We're going to have a piece of that, more of a demonstration. For instance, I'll talk, I'm not going to talk for Rob Turner, but I have a good friend, he's a friend of mine. He wants to put a small facility here, 1,000, 2,000 feet of crown maple syrup. He'll have a little tasting room, and he'll have maybe a little demonstration process. But if someone wants to go see how this whole massive 50,000 square foot factory works to process maple syrup, to put every one of those here to showcase that is too big. So it'll be a showcase of a couple thousand feet where he can just point and say, hey, we can drive you and show you over to the main facility over here on the east side of Dutchess County.
So two questions, or actually three. One of them is, you mentioned the term ULI, and I'd like you to clarify what that stands for.
Okay.
The other one was, is there any plans for any type of a farmer's market within this complex as the residential areas build out? And then third, are any of these demonstration tenants more local? You mentioned Crown Maple, which is local. Some of the other ones sounded more like national type operators, but just what's the local possibilities?
No, well, I'll start with the first one. The ULI stands for Urban Land Institute.
Okay, thank you.
It's a nationwide real estate. It's one of the top organizations that works both with the government and private sector as far as coordinating land policies and cutting edge projects and land use, proper land use, and so forth. So that why I think there is a definition of agrihood, believe it or not, already in the Urban Land Institute's books. It's sort of the theme book for real estate, land plan, urban development, and so forth. Farmers markets, we'll work with the local Hyde Park farmers markets, and we don't want to disrupt any existing locations. So we'll have our program and amenities consultants work to do that. But my guess is there'll be some form of small markets here and there yet to promote that. That's going to be part of the theme of this. Yes, we'll have acres of farms on site as well, as you know. As far as the demonstration of those tenants, yeah, we're shooting for as many local tenants as possible. And we have, we're talking to a couple, and unfortunately, some of the names were in the middle of negotiation. I don't want to share right now, but offline I could. And yeah, no, we're always going to start with that. And it's a balance, as you know, between, the very local mom and pop and getting some credit tenants. We'll always start with local and go up the chain. So we do have to obviously work with the markets and the macro markets and capital markets and how that works. Our theme of this is Hudson Valley based, no ifs, ands, and buts, and it's culinary, agricultural based.
Sure.
And we try not to deviate from that, and that really will drive a lot of the people that are going to come here.
You mentioned farmland. Could you just quickly elaborate on that?
Sure. The whole project is approximately 340 acres. It's divided between the sewer plant of 2 acres, the first hotel for 3.5 acres. The remaining 335 acres is what's developable. However, we're only developing 120 of those acres. There's be 220 acres of open space and so forth. Within our envelope, we have planned currently a main 3 to 5 acre farm. Again, it'll be a farm, but it'll be more of a teaching working farm for producing locally and for various programs that are going to be on site and for the neighborhood and the town and so forth. And there'll be a small amount of vineyards, demonstration vineyards. I know City Winery does do their own demonstration vineyards. They don't use their own grapes. We are working with another local winery in Dutchess County that will produce some grapes for bottling there. City Winery does more of a showcase. They mostly buy their grapes from Napa. But the other winery we're talking to, they are talking to City Winery about producing wine on site. This used to be a small part of it was used by the Jesuits back in the 1800s as a vineyard for wine. So we're going to use that historical value of this project to really bring the old history and tradition into the local market here. You'll see there is that water tower on site too. We are keeping that. The old 2007 plan involved knocking that down. We did not want to knock that down. It was built in the 1890s. We actually moved our entire plan around to accommodate keeping that there, building a terrace around it. We had actually McCormick building a terrace, designed a terrace around it so people can sit out there and look, because that's about 175 feet elevation looking down, and you have great views into the valley from there. And buildings in front of it we kept lower so that it doesn't block any views. The project does step up over to about 220 feet from 90 feet along Route 9. So we're going to try to take advantage of those views with agricultural farms and edible walkways and so forth and trails. So there'll be one main farm, and then there'll be sporadic farms all around the project when people go on hikes and so forth. There'll be nature walks. You have trees that are identified what they are and how. We hired about a year and a half ago Annie Farrell, who is actually one of the original designing consultants for Blue Hill. It's down in Stone Barn area with the Barbers and Irene Hamburger. She works with us. She's working very carefully with not only what we currently have, but also bringing in the right designs for each one of the tenants and what they want to grow, how they want to grow it. She's incredible. Actually, she built a little farmobile that we have right by our trailer. It's going to be a showcase. People can come and it'll be a teaching farmobile, which we had built, which is on site right now.
All right. Okay, thank you. We asked you for quite a bit of information, but I think it was good to have everybody sort of brought up to speed and sort of also refreshed about what your focus and your intent is, which is great. So Sarah, at this point, we really don't have to do anything else other than you heard some of our questions and comments and encouragement. So it sounds like you're moving in a good direction, and we'll look forward to further actual applications from you for the balance.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, final thing is for consideration and approval for a request by the Benura DeBrisi Enterprises for the waiver of a late payment.
Yes, and Joe Bernera is here, so I'm gonna just
Okay.
bring him in and then
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Benura.
Good morning, everyone.
First, let me state, just for the record, that I had a conflict in this matter when a different matter came before us preliminarily maybe a month ago, with a potential sale of the hotel. I have some insurance matters with the potential buyer, and so I recused myself, but that no longer applies. So I will be participating in this discussion just for clarity's sake. And Mr. Benura, before you start, I wanted to make a few comments, myself and Sarah as well. We understand that this happened, this problem happened because the city of Poughkeepsie failed to bill Mr. Benura's entity about this tax. And I do understand that part of the contract required your entity to make the payment, even if you weren't billed. But I would just like to comment that, normal business practices are that you are billed for something that you owe. And from what we can understand and from what Sarah has told me, history shows that when they were billed, the Benura DeBreezes paid their bills on time. And rather than prolong this matter, I would like to put forth, we do have the option to waive this overdue late charge as an entity. And since it happened, the IDA has put into motion procedures so that we have taken over the billing from the city of Poughkeepsie, so that this forgotten invoicing will not happen. And based on the history of Mr. Benura's entity paying their bills on time, I would like to personally propose that as an economic development organization who likes to work with businesses that are prompt in their payments and have a history of really developing the city, Dutchess County, I would like to put out a motion that we forgive the penalty in this matter. And if there is a second and no further discussion, you may not have to say a word. But again, I put that out there. I would like to make the motion if somebody else would be willing to second it. If not, we can go to discussion.
I'll second it.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or comment that others would like to make?
I think you've said it all.
I just think it's not a good thing that somebody that has, fulfilled their obligations and done good work in the county in this circumstance. I just think it's unfortunate that it happened. So we have a motion and a second. Jasmine, would you please take a roll call vote?
Sure. Al Torrigiani,
Approved.
Jamie Picone,
Approved.
Amy Bondieri,
Approved.
Kathy Bauer,
Approved.
Mark Doyle,
Approved.
Tim Dean.
Approved. So, Mr. Benura, rather than you having to come here to defend yourself and feel like you're going to have to fight for this, we've already taken care of it, and we thank you.
I thank you very much.
Okay,
Okay.
is there anything else? Okay, not hearing anything else, we will adjourn the meeting.
Oh, that's old.
Okay.